Welcome to Capital Games. I am your host, Sam Kasima. This is episode 9. Today we'll be discussing digital currencies, digital assets, specifically Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana. So I don't know, you probably heard over the past few weeks or months about Bitcoin and how it's gone up and all the different things that is involving it. So I really wanted to take this time today to really deep dive into exactly what is Bitcoin, how it works, and why and what all the hype is surrounding it. So let's start with first just kind of explanation of what Bitcoin is, and it's actually blockchain technology. You may say to yourself, "What is blockchain technology?" I don't want to get too detailed, but it's important to understand the technology behind it and why people are investing in it, why BlackRock, a $10 trillion company with assets under management, is starting an ETF and they're putting lots of money, why Microsoft is considering owning it as an asset, why the US government under the new administration is considering holding it as a strategic reserve, and all those things like that. So, first, let's start at the beginning. So, blockchain technology is basically it's a technology where using cryptography, which is where the term cryptocurrency comes from, is a block of information. Typically, it starts with what's called a genesis block, which is the first block of information. And in that block of information contains details, transactions, or a ledger. And the way it works is that block, once it's created, it can never be changed, altered, or you know compromised, which is why it's which is so important because when you're dealing with values and assets, you want to make sure that whatever information is stored, it can't be changed, altered, or compromised. So that's where the blockchain comes from. So the Genesis block is the first block, and then the subsequent blocks, or the blocks that come after it, are other blocks, is the next set of data or set of transactions. And then when you string all these blocks together, you get a blockchain. That's where the term blockchain comes from. So, what makes Bitcoin special was it was actually the first blockchain. It was the first digital asset that was created by Satoshi Nakamoto. Nobody really knows who he is, but it was actually created in response to the 2008 financial crisis. During that time period, you saw big banks fail one after another, and he tried to create a way where people's assets or value would not be compromised by government spending, by bank failures, and things like that. So he created Bitcoin. Now, in doing this, he used cryptography and blockchains to do this. So, what's really important to know about blockchain, specifically Bitcoin, and why you're seeing the value go up so much is simple supply and demand. When he created Bitcoin, he encoded the code or the information in Bitcoin so that way there would only ever be 21 million Bitcoin ever created. That number cannot go up, it can't go down. It's just the way that it was created, embedded in the technology, that there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. So what that does, it limits the supply. Unlike the US currency or any other currency, fiat currency is just a term used for like paper money, like the Great Britain pound, um, the Chinese yuan. These currencies can just be printed an infinite amount of times, infinite amount of money, which is when you get inflation. What you've seen over the past few years is inflation has gone extremely high because the US government has printed a lot of US dollars. So the more US dollars, the less purchasing power that you're going to see. That's why when you go to the store and you pay $8 for a carton of eggs that you used to pay $2 for, is because they printed so much money that now it costs more dollars to buy the same set of goods. So Bitcoin was really created to solve that problem by limiting the amount of Bitcoin. Since there's only going to be 21 million, it's very, very scarce. And there's the way that basically the consensus mechanism or the way that new blockchains get created is each block, in order to find the next block, there is a algorithm, and it has to be solved. And the way to solve this algorithm is you have to use computer technology, or hash power, as they call it, to figure out the code to unlock the next block. And then when you unlock the next block, you actually get rewarded in Bitcoin for finding that next block. So when you hear of Bitcoin mining, What that actually is the next block being found. So, for example, every 10 minutes or so, there's one Bitcoin block that is found. Prior to this year, each block contained about 7 Bitcoin in that block. Now, every 4 years, there's something called a Bitcoin halving. What that means is the supply found in each block gets cut in half, it gets reduced. So in March of or April of this year, that number, 7 Bitcoin per block, got reduced in half to 3.5 Bitcoin per block. So the last halving that we have occurred in about May of 2024. I'm sorry, May of 2020. And anytime that you cut the supply in half, you reduce the supply, you're typically going to see the price go up after that because now you're limiting the supply. It's just supply and demand. And since there's less Bitcoin being produced every day, every month, the price over time rises. That's what happened in 2020, and that's what's happening now in 2024. When we take it back to 2020, the last halving, before the halving, the price of Bitcoin was probably around maybe like $6,000, something like that, $6,000. During the peak at the height in 2025, November of 2025, Bitcoin reached a peak of 67,000. So as you can see, it took about a year and a half after the halving, but the price of Bitcoin rose dramatically from about 6,000 to 67,000. For example, this year in 2024, in April, the price of Bitcoin was roughly, I think, around maybe like 35, maybe 40,000 before the halvening. And then once the halvening took place, you really saw the price of Bitcoin rise all the way to 67,000, actually 69,000, creating a new all-time high. So this halvening process, this reduction of supply, is really what causes the price of Bitcoin to rise. In addition to that, we also have other different factors, like, for example, in the US, there was a Bitcoin ETF. Now you're actually getting into the regular financial market, stocks and things like that. Now people can actually buy an ETF, which actually holds the Bitcoin. This also made the price of Bitcoin rise. So currently today is November 27th, 2024. Price of Bitcoin is roughly around 96,000. This last week, it was at an all-time high of about 99,000. And we're seeing the price go up. And we're going to continue to see the price go up over the next year or so as we enter the what's called the bull market. So because of this halvening that happens every 4 years, Bitcoin tends to have this cycle of 4 years where the first 3 years the price is pretty low or even comes down. And then in the fourth year, which would be actually 2025 for this time, 1 year after the halvening, you'll see a massive price increase. So that's kind of some of the background information for Bitcoin. And I know, again, this is not financial advice, but it is financial education. I think it's important for people to understand this technology, understand this asset class because it is new, and really try to figure out how it fits in their financial portfolio. Me personally, I like to have between 1 to 5% of my portfolio in digital assets because it's highly speculative. I don't want to put more than that. But as it becomes more adopted, as it becomes more regulated, as it becomes more financially secure, I will definitely allocate more of my portfolio into it. Then also what happens is the reason why I say 1 to 5%, that 1 to 5% could actually grow to 10, 15, 20% of my portfolio if the price continues to rise. At the same time, if the price drops, I'm only going to be losing 1 to 5%. So it's more about risk management when you're dealing with any type of asset and making sure that the amount that you have allocated makes sense for your risk appetite and makes sense for your portfolio. With that being said, the way I see digital assets is kind of how I saw the internet, 20, 30 years ago. When the internet was going on and you saw the dot-com bubble back in 2020, there was a lot of different companies that sprouted up. A lot of them failed, some of them made it. And you saw the huge appreciation and value of the companies that did make it, your Yahoos, your Googles, all these different companies that were around during that dot-com bubble and during that internet boom. It really changed the landscape of the world and how things are actually operating. And I think we possibly we'll see the same thing when it comes to cryptocurrencies and digital assets. Now, the thing is, there's over, I think, probably like 100,000, 200,000 different cryptocurrency projects that you can get into. Bitcoin is the number one. And so for that reason, it will be considered the safest of those assets and of that asset class. So when you're trying to allocate money into the space, if you're risk averse, you probably just want to have just stick with Bitcoin because it's the easiest and the probably one of the easiest to manage. And now, since you have access to the ETFs, you can choose not to self custody. So the power also of Bitcoin is since it's a decentralized asset, which means that no government controls it, no one person really controls the network. The way that each block is found is by with something called ASICs, application specific integrated circuits. These are machines that are looking for the next block, right? And they run on electricity to power and keep looking for the next block. And when a block is found, they get rewarded with the Bitcoin, which is why you have mining companies really spending tons and tons of money on this hardware to find these blocks because every time they do, they get a portion of the Bitcoin that is found in that block. And it's also decentralized because anyone in the world can set up one of these ASICs, right? You can be in China, you can be in Africa, you can be in El Salvador, you can be in the United States. And as long as one of these nodes is running, one of these nodes is on, the information on the blocks can be transferred from anywhere in the world. And because of that decentralization, it really gives power to the holders of it because if your government doesn't like what you're doing, they can't control your Bitcoin and they can't control what you do with it. So if you want to send, $1 billion, $10, $20, $100 across the world, you can do that in a matter of minutes and at a fraction of a cost versus doing like, let's say, a wire transfer. And Bitcoin is really changed the game where now countries are starting to hold it because they realize that their fiat currency, their currency that they're dealing with because of government policies and different things like that, it affects the value of it, right? You have hyperinflation in certain countries where they're actually burning the dollars or the bills because they're basically worthless. So they rather burn them for heat versus spending them at the store. So if you're a country that has hyperinflation, you may look to Bitcoin as a solution because now you have a currency that is not tied to any other currency, not tied to government policies, where now you can hold your value. So there's definitely certain countries that they see their dollar or their value of their currency losing money, losing weight every time. So what they may choose to do is now allocate some of that money into Bitcoin or other digital assets, where now they can really hold their value and hold their spending power for a future time period. Um, so that was basically Bitcoin. And what also makes Bitcoin special, besides the halvening and the 21 million supply, is so far there's been about 19 to 20 million Bitcoin mined. That means there's only going to be another 1 million Bitcoin mined for the next 100 years or so. So the supply is going to keep on slowly coming down every halvening, every few years. And again, it's going to force the price up. And also, as more people buy it and hold it, it's making the price go up as well because it's becoming scarce, right? It's called digital gold because it's even more scarce than gold because gold is in the ground, and anytime the price of gold rises, there's mining companies who literally will just turn on more machines to go find more gold so then they can go sell it on the market at the high price. So it's really called hard money. And once you understand money and how it works and how it can be printed and things like that, you probably will look to a way to hedge against inflation. That's why you really want to hold assets. That's why you see real estate always do so well. No matter what the government does as far as printing money and inflation, typically real estate is going to hold the value, right? So that's why houses now are so much more expensive because over the years, inflation has gone up, but the price that you have to pay in dollars versus the house, that's gone up as well. So if you own stocks, if you own gold, if you own real estate, and now Bitcoin, these are a great way to hedge against inflation and your government printing, just obscene amounts of money. So The next topic I wanted to cover is really Ethereum. So Ethereum is the reason why I say it's almost like a new technology and things like that, because with Ethereum, and a little bit different from Bitcoin, you have the ability to actually code and manipulate the blockchain, right? So Ethereum has something called smart contracts. Smart contracts is taking the power of the blockchain where it's unchangeable, you can't alter it, but then now you can actually write computer code into the blockchain. And what that does, it allows you to create decentralized applications. So now you can have a trustless environment where you can create a contract that you say executes a code or executes a certain transaction based on what the code says. And now anyone can use that code, anyone can use that transaction. You don't have to trust the person to to deliver on their end because it's already written in the code. So it's created trustless and permissionless applications called decentralized application called dApps, where you can tap into computer technology on the blockchain. So Ethereum, I see more as like an internet, where Bitcoin is more a store of value. It's going to hold the value of assets over a time, where Ethereum has the ability to actually execute code. I think the evolution of Ethereum and smart contracts is some of the things that you see done now here on a computer can be done on the blockchain. For example, if you wanted to store medical records, because of the smart contract code, you can put those medical records on the blockchain. If you wanted to have votes, if somebody wanted to vote, you could put that on the blockchain. I do real estate. If you wanted to figure out who owned a property, right? It's typically done through title. You can put title records on the blockchain, right? So these are all the different aspects and all the different tools that I believe in the future blockchain can be used to really solve a lot of these problems. For example, title is very expensive, but if it was on the blockchain, it could be reduced the cost drastically. So I think these are the areas where you're going to see different companies, different government agencies use smart contracts to their advantage. I actually saw recently that I think California was testing out putting their driver's license on the blockchain, like their all their records on the blockchain. They were going to use a cryptocurrency called Avalanche or AVAX. These are really, I think, how applications and how blockchain can be used in the future, and it's going to be a major disruptor. So a lot of these projects in cryptocurrency, they're going to be completely worthless. So as you hear the hype and you see this meme coins, they go up, they go down, a lot of them are going to go to zero because they're not actually solving any problems. They're not creating any value. They're just speculation and basically gambling. But there's going to be a few of these projects that actually do deliver. They're going to be used on a daily basis to solve big problems. And if you are invested in some of these projects early on and they actually do deliver, it's like investing in Amazon or Google before they went public, right? You have the ability and the opportunity to invest in a technology before it gets given to the masses. Now, the issue is there's so many of them, and how do you know which one is going to actually deliver on the promises or actually become mainstream? You really don't. But the same thing was said about Bitcoin, and now Bitcoin has become a store of value, and it holds 1.3 trillion dollars of value right now, and that number is only going to continue to rise as time goes by. As you see, not only retail people, you're going to see companies starting to buy Bitcoin, holding on its balance sheet, and also now we're hearing countries. El Salvador was the first country. Now we're hearing the United States may also hold Bitcoin as a strategic reserve. So as more people buy this asset and they believe that it's going to be able to hold its value, it's going to keep going up. You know, exponentially. So that's why I think it's important to understand, and that's why I really wanted to just dive into this topic, and also kind of give people a warning as well. If you're just getting into this space and just industry, more than likely in your first go around, you're probably going to lose money, right? You're going to get caught up in the hype. You don't have enough information to really understand how these cycles work. For example, like right now, the price of Bitcoin is like $100,000. Most people aren't going to buy it till it's like 110, 120, and or maybe even 130. I don't know how high it's going to go this cycle. Originally, my thought was maybe 120, 130, but we're already at 100. It's possible that can go higher, but most people aren't going to buy in until it reaches that point. And then what happens is, let's say it goes to 120, 130, and that's where you decide to buy. More than likely, at the end of the cycle, which is probably going to end sometime in 2025, the price will come down. So if you bought at 120 and then if you think it's going to go to 200,000, 300,000, which it may over time, right? 5, 10, 20 years, but then in the next 1 year, it goes down to, let's say, 80,000, and you bought it at 120. At that point, you're probably going to sell, right? Because you're like, oh, I need to get my money back. I lost my money. And then you're going to sell and you're going to take a loss. So that's what's going to happen to a majority of people who enter during this cycle. You're going to lose your money. Now, there's people who have been in this space for years and years and years, and they've been buying, right, when Bitcoin was 10,000, when Bitcoin was 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000. And, their plan may be to hold it for the next 10, 20 years, right? It really depends on your time horizon. Or their plan may be to, when it hits to 120, sell, right? And take some profits. It really depends on what your strategy is and what your plan is. But I would just say educate yourself as much as possible. This is my first time covering this topic here on this channel, but there are other channels that I would recommend. Coin Bureau is on YouTube. They give a lot of good information. Digital Asset News also on YouTube. They give a lot of information as well. And there's another gentleman called Benjamin Cowan. He's got a YouTube channel. He really gets into the technical analysis, and specifically Bitcoin and Bitcoin dominance, where there's a lot of information where you can kind of just learn about the space and educate yourself and see if it's something that you want to allocate money into or not, right? At the end of the day, you're responsible for your decisions. You're responsible for your financial future, and you really got to make sure that you are arming yourself with all the information that you need to make the right decisions for you. With that being said, I did want to talk about the next topic, which is Solana. Solana is another cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, like Ethereum. But to me, from what I've seen, it is, as far as smart contracts, it's a competitor to Ethereum. But to me, right now, it's actually better as far as a usable product. Ethereum is right now, for example, I think the price is 3,300 or 3,600. Last cycle, in 2021, it reached as high as 4,700. And this cycle, it probably will go past that at some point. Solana, last cycle, the high was 2,000, I'm sorry, $240. And I think right now, today, Solana is about $260. The reason why I like Solana more than Ethereum, because it's faster and cheaper. Once you start actually using these blockchains and using the technology, you'll see the difference. Now, a lot of people right now, they're just buying it because it's for speculation. They don't even realize that you can actually do things with these certain cryptocurrencies. Like Bitcoin, you can't really do much besides hold it. And you can hold it in an ETF, or you can hold it in your self custody wallet. That's also the power of cryptocurrency, is you don't hold it at like your bank or your brokerage. You can actually hold it on chain, right, in your wallet, where only you have access. You have your keys. You can also hold it on centralized exchanges. But as we saw with FTX, there's a risk to that. If anything happens with that platform, whatever cryptocurrencies that you're holding on their platform, it goes. So it's best to actually hold your cryptocurrency in a self custody wallet where you control it and it's not held by a centralized exchange. Or now what people are doing is they're buying ETFs. So if you don't want to self custody yourself, you can buy the ETF, and it's basically a proxy of holding the actual asset. Now, Solana, like I said, once you start using these digital currencies, you'll see that Solana is the fastest and it's the cheapest. Ethereum was the first smart contract. So, they have the first mover advantage, right? They have the network effect where they were the first people using it. So there's a lot of money that's in Ethereum. I think, for example, right now, something around 200 or 300 billion dollars worth of value on Ethereum, where Solana is only about 110 billion. So it's about, one third less. I'm sorry, two-thirds less than what Ethereum is. But to me, it's faster, it's better, it's easier to use, the experience is better. Now, there is a little bit of issue when it comes to decentralization. It's not as decentralized as Ethereum, but I think they're trying to solve some of those issues as well. So the reason why I like Solana and the reason why I like smart contracts is because, like I said, you can hold different information on it, but you can also do something called decentralized finance. I came up in a banking background, and that's what we call centralized finance. Your Wells Fargo's, your Chase banks. These are places where you would go if you needed capital. and if you needed to borrow money, or you wanted interest on your funds. Now with blockchain, you could actually do some of those things on the actual blockchain, right? You can borrow money, you can use your crypto as collateral and get a loan. This is why it's called decentralized finance, right? But you go to a bank, you're going to use the protocols on a certain chain like a Solana or like an Ethereum, where you can lend, where you can borrow, where you can get yield, where you can get a return, where you can stake. Staking is basically where, if, like for example, with Ethereum and Solana, you can stake it, which means that you own the asset, but you can stake it on a protocol and they'll actually give you a yield, 3%, 5%, 6%. Really depends on what platform you're using. But now you actually can get a return on your yield. And then also, as the price goes up, you're getting the price appreciation as well. So decentralized finance, I think, is going to be one of the biggest use cases for blockchain, as well as people understand it and use it. And now you can also send money very quickly, from person to person or peer to peer, using different blockchains, right? You can send money like you would, like a wire at the bank cost you $25, right? You can send, for example, on Solana, you could send $10,000 to somebody for 5 cents or 2 cents. So the cost is so much cheaper, and as more people adopt it and it becomes more accepted, and you'll be able to use it for payments at stores and different things like that. So there's so many different applications for blockchain technology. NFTs, right? Non-fungible tokens. I think at some point these are going to be used almost as coupons or membership reward programs. All this different technology is really the true value of blockchain. And I think as it matures, as it's more regulated, as more people use it, we'll start to see more of it. And some of these projects will become household names, and they will be widely used. And if you're early, you have the opportunity to partake in the appreciation and the value growth of these projects. So I just think like the space needs to be understood. And if you are considering allocating any funds, that you need to do your research. You need to, listen to different projects, use some of the projects, try to figure out which ones work for you. And if you are a business owner, if you are a creator, figure out how you can add value, right? What innovation can you provide? There's lots of different things. For example, there's one project called Helium Mobile. They have a data plan where you can actually have a cell phone that's linked to a blockchain. This is also on Solana, where now they're actually providing mobile service through blockchain, right? These are some of the things and some of the problems that people are trying to solve using blockchain. And I think if you are a creator, if you are a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, try to figure out how to use blockchain to solve problems, because now once you have a problem now that can be solved very quickly or sent to the masses, you have ability to help a lot of people, right? Solve a big problem for a lot of people, or a small problem for a lot of people. But now, since it's on chain, you'll really be able to impact more than if you would have just done it in let's say, a traditional manner. Um, with all that being said, I'm going to say again, do your research. If you're interested in blockchain technology, use some of the resources that I had mentioned. There's a lot of different information. Be careful. There's a lot of scammers out there, especially as you see the market go up. Most things are scams, right? So you got to really do your research and understand that this is a very risky uh, asset class. And if you really do start getting on chain and you start investing, there's a lot of risk, and you got to make sure that you are prepared for that risk, and that you are doing everything to safeguard yourself. And that way, you don't lose money. Because at the end of the day, this show is called Capital Games, and the most important thing about capital is first, you know, getting it, and then keeping it, and then learning how to grow it, right? So first you want to make sure you get it, and then you make sure you keep it. That's really important, not to lose your capital, and then grow it. Once you figure out those three things in general, you know, capital and money, just it gets a lot easier. So with that being said, thank you for watching. If you do like this type of content, like, share, comment. You can find me on Instagram at Sam the Investor, Capital Games on Instagram, Capital Games YouTube. Uh, Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon.